You're listening to Answering the Call, the official podcast of the 12th Man Foundation. Our show provides listeners with an insider perspective of Texas A&M athletics and its greatest supporters. This podcast will bring you exclusive interviews with coaches, athletes, donors, and the dedicated staff of Aggie Athletics and the 12th Man Foundation. You ready? Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to Answering the Call, the official podcast of the 12th Man Foundation. This is your host, Ivy Robinson, and today I am sitting in the studio with Aggie women's basketball head coach, Joni Taylor. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Joni.
Thank you for having me, Ivy. I'm excited.
We are so excited. We're thrilled that you're here. And just to begin, I would like to start at the very beginning of your story. Can you shed some light on your background in Meridian, Mississippi? I know you grew up there. Mm-hmm. Maybe share a favorite memory from your childhood. Tell us about that.
So, as you said, I'm from Meridian, Mississippi. My mom is from Mississippi. My dad's from Louisiana. I'm 45. I was born in 1979. So, you know, I have a unique perspective of like getting a little bit of like 70s, 80s, 90s. My parents are both educators. And so my brother and I, at a very early age, just were instilled like in terms of like discipline, education, how important it is. Their best friends were school teachers. Memory I can laugh at now, but I didn't think was funny growing up. One of my mom's closest friends was an English teacher, an AP English teacher at the school. And so one Saturday she came over, and I mean, I'm in elementary school, right? I don't remember like what age, but it's elementary school for sure. And you know, on Saturday you want to eat your cereal and watch cartoons. Like that's what you wake up on Saturdays to do. And I remember her saying to me like, what did you do this week in school? Like, what's going on? And I was just like, oh, it's fine. Like, I just gave her a very vague, very short, dismissive response. Not disrespectful, but just kind of like dismissive. And I remember she said to me something like, wow, I expected more of you than that. But now I know how to curb my expectation when you and I have a conversation. It cut me to the bone.
Wow.
And it taught me a couple of things. Number one, like I really wasn't prepared to give her a good answer. Like I had an answer. I had a better answer than what I gave her. So it taught me to be prepared to talk about myself, what I wanted to do, how I wanted to serve. And then it also taught me that when an adult takes the time to ask you a question at that young age, give him or her the appropriate response. And so I tease her about that now to this day. Another funny story, same English teacher, Miss Mabel Otis. I was at the house and one of my friends, we were on the phone and they were like, where are you at? And she's like, it's where are you? You don't end a sentence in a prepositional phrase. And I was like, okay, fine. So I hang up the phone. 15 minutes later, phone rings, you know, hey, where are you at? She's like, it is, where are you?
Where are you?
And so it happened a third time and I'm just not thinking about it. And she grounded me. And I was like, you can't ground me. Like, you're not my mom. Like, she was like, if you don't know how to talk on the phone, then you can't talk on the phone. You will never hear me say, where are you at?
There you go.
Where are you? It's funny now, but stories of growing up, being around not only her, but just other friends of my parents who were in our community movers and shakers and had some things going. And so my brother and I at a really early age figured out like, hey, like if we're going to be on this Crenshaw train, you know, my maiden name is Crenshaw, we got to have a bigger purpose than ourselves and think outside of like what it is we want to do for us. And so my mom played basketball in high school. My dad played basketball in high school and in junior college. So we had a goal in the backyard. My earliest memories are playing basketball. I was the only girl in the neighborhood. My brother is 16 months older than me, so he was just 1 year older than me in school. So I kind of ran with the boys and hung out with him, was a typical tomboy. And that's how I fell in love with the game. And the game is now obviously taking me places that I never, ever thought or imagined it would take me. 23 years I've been doing this. It's crazy. And 10th year as a head coach. So I'm fortunate, I'm blessed, and just really happy to be in an environment growing up where I saw other people give of themselves, think about others, and think about what they could do to make their situation better or the people around them better. And it's a huge part of who I am now.
Going back to influential people in your life and the game of basketball, at what point did you decide you wanted to pursue that in college?
My dad had a twin brother. He's passed away now. And his goddaughter lived in Natchez, Mississippi. And I remember one night my dad said to me, hey, like, you know, Toya's going to come and spend the night with us because she's going to school in Tuskegee, Alabama. She's driving her car. So our house in Meridian's kind of like halfway. So she's going to spend the night with us. I was like, okay, cool. I'm, again, probably middle school at this point, seventh grade, eighth grade. And so this senior in high school, about to be in college, girl drives up, and, I'm kind of like, she looks all cool and she's going to college. And so I'm kind of like asking her all these questions. And I was like, why are you going to Tuskegee? Like, of all the places in Mississippi or other places closer to Natchez, how did you end up at Tuskegee? And she said, I got a basketball scholarship to go. I'm going to go there to play basketball. And I said, you can get a scholarship to play basketball? She goes, yeah, it pays for everything. It pays for your education. And that's when I was like, oh, that's what I'm
It's
doing.
like the light bulb just came on.
That's what I'm doing. I knew I loved it. I knew I was going to be pretty good at it. I did not know at that point in my life you could go get a free education. And then as soon as she said that and the light bulb clicked, I looked around, and my next door neighbor, Steve McMillan, ended up going to Mississippi State on a football scholarship. He was a couple of years older than me. And I remember seeing people pull up in his driveway to do home visits and seeing coaches, walk in and out of his house. Students who were a couple years older than me did the same thing. And so I had people, Derek McKee lived down the street from me. He played basketball in the NBA. And so I had people around me, fortunately, who were carving the path that I wanted to do. And I just studied them and watched them. But that moment with Toya was when I knew that that's what I wanted to do. Here's a crazy story moving forward that a lot of people don't know. Toya is Alexis Morris's mother. Alexis Morris that played here. So they're from the same area. I've known Lexi Morris since she was a kid. And so it's just a small, small, small circle. Lexi Morris's mom was my uncle's goddaughter.
Wow. The connections are just phenomenal.
Yep.
So Coach Taylor, you were a 4-year letter winner at the University of Alabama. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what led to the opportunity to play at the University of Alabama and a little bit about your experience as a basketball student athlete there.
Mm-hmm. I knew I wanted to play in the SEC. Being in the South, it's what you saw all the time. So for me, it still is SEC, obviously, but I knew I wanted to play in the Southeastern Conference. Even then, to me, they set themselves apart in terms of like how they competed for championships, the talent that they put out on the floor in any sport. And so I was fortunate. Obviously, I got to watch Mississippi State up close. I got to watch Ole Miss up close. Alabama was 91 miles from my house, so I got to watch what Alabama did very closely. And I started going to camp there. I went to basketball camp there and fell in love with it. Ended up obviously taking visits to other SEC schools, but Alabama had my heart. They had my heart from the moment I went to camp. And it was, at that time, the best decision that I had made up until that point in my life. Rick Moody was my head coach. He was a deacon at his church. And he lived his life through example every single day of what the priority was. Obviously we play on Sundays, and we played on Sundays back then too. And he was late to shoot around every Sunday because he taught his Sunday school class. And he was like, I am not going to miss my Sunday school class. So he walked into shoot around about 15 minutes late every day with the suit on and a Bible in his hand. Never said a word, but was preaching a message. And just things like that stuck. And he always said to me, as well as our assistant coaches, like, Joni, you have a chance to really like affect change in a positive way, and not just because of what you do on the floor. And so he pushed me to join the student council. I was on the homecoming court my senior year. I was voted one of the most influential African Americans on campus at the University of Alabama. And it was because I stepped out of our student athlete box and put myself in the regular student body and ran for student government and did other things, because he instilled that in me. And so I am very similar in that way. Like, I think that we have so many opportunities while we are in college to do some amazing things. And it's so easy to get caught up in the box you're in. But when you walk outside of that box and step outside of it, there's so many more opportunities and ways that you can help affect things. And so what's very unique about my college experience, I would say, is that 4 of my teammates were also campers. So we had known each other from like going to camp over the years, like starting like in 9th and 10th grade, and we all ended up going to school there. And so we already had a bond and had a friendship. And, we go on vacations together. We have a group text message. And so just the life lessons that I learned, obviously, we went to the NCAA tournament and had some great runs, but I'm fortunate that I chose an institution that supported student athletes. I'm fortunate that I played for a head coach, Rick Moody, who cared about us as a person and not just what we could do for him on the basketball floor.
So many things I want to unpack there. And you mentioned stepping out of the student athlete box and getting involved in the community. I want to come back to that because I have some questions about that. But you also, when you were at the University of Alabama, you studied education. Why did you choose that path? Does it go back to your parents?
It does. It absolutely goes back to my parents. I wanted to be a high school counselor and a Christian counselor on the weekend. In order to be a counselor, you have to teach first because they feel like counseling and administrators need to have the experience of being a teacher. So I was going to go to grad school, get my counseling degree, teach for 2 years, and then become a counselor. And that was my path. And then my 5th year, I was done playing basketball, but I had to stay and student teach because at Alabama, it was really hard to student teach and play at the same time because you're just missing so many, days of student teaching. So my 5th year, I was done playing. I was student teaching. And Mal Moore was the athletic director when I was there. And he decided that if you were still on scholarship but not playing, you should put in 20 hours a week somewhere in the athletic department. And our men's basketball coach at the time, Mark Goffrey, walked up to me, and Darren Boatwright was his director of operations. Darren is now an athletic director, but he said, "Hey, do you want to be my student assistant?" And I was like, "Sure." So my 5th year at Alabama, I worked in the men's basketball office for Darren Boatwright, but I had my hands in everything. And because I played, they gave me a ton of responsibility. This was back when you could decorate the hotel. Like you could take down pictures and put up like basketball pictures. Like you could do all kinds of stuff. And so I did all that, and I arranged dinners. And then when families came, like I helped host. I wrote letters. I put stuff in the mail. Like it just, in my eye, like I just fell in love with it. It was also the year 9/11. And I can remember the school I was student teaching at, they were renovating the school. And so the classroom that we were in, part of it had gotten shut down because they were doing construction. And so we were in a mobile home. And I remember we didn't know what had happened because we were in a mobile home with no TV. And when the class changed, it was time for us to walk out. And everybody is outside just like in tears crying. And we were like, what's going on?
Right. What happened?
And then we find out. And I can remember like some of my friends had relatives, sisters in New York they couldn't get in contact with. It was just, I get chills thinking about it now. And I remember going to the men's basketball office, and we are like just as everybody in front of the TV, like just crying. And Mark Goffrey called. He was in Birmingham because September, even now, is the month when you can go out and recruit, and you go to the high schools of your student athletes that you're recruiting. You can go into their home and do home visits. And so like you have just a short window. And so literally every single day you're going here, and then you're flying here, and you're going to the next place and the next place. And I remember he called, and I answered the phone, and he said, "Is everybody okay there?" And I said, "Yes, we're fine." And I'm getting emotional talking about it. And he said, "Well, they've grounded all flights in Birmingham, but we've got to figure out how to still see these kids." So I'm getting in the car, I'm coming home, and when I get to the office, you guys have figured out how I'm going to get to all these places by bus, train, or car. And so I was like, whew. So we took a deep breath, dried our eyes, and like pulled out like the list of all the places he had to go and tried to map out like how he was going to get from Birmingham to Kansas City to Florida, because despite what has happened and how tragic it is, we've got to get this
Still a
figured
job
out.
to be done, right?
And then I can remember the first time the Yankees played again after 9/11, and the first time the New York Giants took the field after 9/11, and the national anthem being played, and not having a dry eye in the house, right? And I just kept saying, like, I want to be a part of that. Like, this is what sports can do. Like, this is how sports can bring people together and unify us and give us a common goal and mission and all the things. And I just remember thinking, like, I want that. I want that. And so I still didn't know that I wanted to coach, but I knew I wanted that. And as things kind of progressed, I was like, I think I like coaching. And at the end of that year, my position coach, Mike Murphy, called me up, and he said, "Hey." And I said, "Hey, what's up? You need a favor?" And because at the time, when just like the men, when the women had recruits in town, I'd sit with them at the game and go to dinner with them and talk to them. And I said, "Who do you have in town? Like, who do you want me to talk to? What parent is here?" And he goes, "Well, you're on the right track, but a little bit different. I just got offered the head job at Troy University. I'm going to take it, and I want you to be my recruiting coordinator." And I threw the phone across the room. Freaked me out.
What?
Like, oh my God. And I said, and I knew this is what I wanted, but I was like, Coach Murphy, I don't know how to break down film. I don't know how to do this. I just started listing all the things I did not know how to do. And he said, Joni, but you do know this. And you know my philosophy. I coached you for 4 years. Like, you can finish my sentences for me. You've got a great personality. You will figure out the rest. Think about it. Call your parents and let me know. Everything in me wanted to stay at Alabama, go to grad school, and be comfortable. 91 miles from my house. My friends are there. And so it was like, do I stay comfortable or do I get thrown into the fire?
It's kind of like a turning point, a crossroads, right? You're
Yep.
like, what am I going to choose?
And I chose to get thrown into the fire, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What did it feel like accepting your very first head coach position?
Oh, goodness. Wow. It was something that I was very humbled and grateful for. So we're now in 2015. I've been at Georgia for 4 years as the associate head coach for Andy Landers, who is a legend, Hall of Famer. He was the only full-time women's basketball coach at the University of Georgia and was there for 36 years. And when he retired, I was heartbroken. Didn't see it coming. I knew he wasn't going to coach forever, but he surprised us all. And I remember he retired, and then we had spring break. And I don't think I got off my couch the whole week. And I also knew that I was ready to be a head coach. I had interviewed at some other places, and it didn't work out. And so obviously I was going to go after the job, but I was also trying to talk him into like, no, we didn't go to the tournament that year. It was the first time he had never been to the NCAA tournament in a really long time. And I was like, you're just emotional. Like, no. I remember every day during spring break almost, he knocked on my door and was like, get yourself up off this couch and start preparing to interview for this job. And I'm like, no, you go in there and tell them you changed your mind. Like, so I finally came to terms with that. And after a long interview process, I got a call from Dr. Carla Williams, who's now the AD at Virginia. And she said, hey, can you come up to our office? And I called my parents, and I was engaged to my now husband. And I said, I just got a phone call. I don't know how to read Carla. I'm very close to Carla, but she is very, like, plays it straight to the vest. And so I can remember walking up those steps. She didn't put me on the elevator. She put me on the steps, and I'm walking up 3 flights of steps to get to the AD's office where Greg McGarity and her are waiting. And they go through this whole spiel about the people they interviewed and all the things about Georgia and why it takes a special person. And then they offered me the job. And, I was shocked. Knew that I was prepared, knew that I was ready, but I was also like, there's a lot of people who could get this job. And so I just remember having a huge sense of gratitude and humility and just excitement about what that would look like.
Reflecting on all of your coaching positions prior to getting to Texas A&M, were there any positions you think were extremely pivotal in paving the way to get you to this opportunity at Texas A&M?
I think the one that sticks out for me, there's so many, but I've been really fortunate. My coaching tree, I've been really fortunate of who I worked with as an assistant and worked for. When I was at Louisiana Tech is when I realized I wanted to be a head coach. I knew I wasn't ready, but I knew I wanted to be a head coach. And so I started building my profile, my portfolio. I went and got a huge binder, and I just started, offense, defense, blobs, slobs, philosophy. While at Louisiana Tech, Leon Barmore, who is a Hall of Famer and like just legend, he still lived there. And he took a liking to me. And every once in a while, I still will get a phone call or a voicemail from him. And I don't erase any of them, they're all on my phone. And he just started sharing little tidbits and secrets here and there. And so to have a living and breathing legend like pour into me and share little nuggets with me as an assistant coach was something that was really valuable to me. And then I leave there and I go back to my alma mater as an assistant coach for 2 years and worked under Wendell Hudson, who had been an administrator at one point, but he was also the first African American at Alabama to ever get a scholarship. And so to just hear that story was powerful. And so, I'm taking all that in, and I leave there and I go to LSU and work for Van Chancellor, who is another Hall of Famer, 3-time WNBA champion, Coach Cheryl Swoots, Coach Tina Thompson, Cynthia Cooper, like the legends. And to have the chance to work for him for a year and learn from him, like I just was very fortunate to be around great mentors and great coaches. And that's not to even mention like the assistant coaches who I work side by side with, who are now head coaches and doing their own thing at an elite level. And then to tap that off by being under Andy. What's special about him is that I just told you he was there for 36 years. And when I got there, he could have easily said, hey, I've got this, right? You handle that and I've got this. But he was the exact opposite. He said, hey, I want to know what you know. I've only been at Georgia. you've been at LSU, you've been at Alabama, you've been around Leon Baltimore. Like, I want to know what you know. Teach me. What Hall of Famer says that, right? And so he put me in a really unique position to learn and to grow and to empower me and to find my coaching voice. And my path was really special, but it was also intentional. Like, once I realized that I wanted to be a head coach, I was very intentional about the jobs that I took, because you can be put in a box, right? I only want you to recruit, or I only want you to do this, and I wanted to see everything so that I could feel like I was as prepared as possible. There's nothing like stepping those 6 inches over, but I wanted to have my hand in a little bit of everything. So I was very intentional about the people who I chose to work for. And there were some high level people that I said no to, because they literally said to me, like, hey, I've got an associate head coach. I've got somebody who does all my scouts. I just want you to go recruit kids. And I was like, I appreciate it. I respect you, but no, thank you. And so I think while I was very fortunate, I also wanted to make sure that I was intentional about the people who I worked for.
I love that. Coach Taylor, what's your coaching philosophy here at Texas A&M? How have you implemented it? And tell us about your vision overall for Texas A&M women's basketball.
Our vision is where ladies become legends, right? That's what we want. We want to be legendary. We want to leave things better than we found it. We talk about all types of things becoming, like building your house. Everybody, every day, you're building a house. When people ride by and look at your house, what are they going to say? Every day, you're laying a foundation to make that happen. And so, how are you leaving this program? Look around, see what the national championship team left for you, the facilities we have. What are we leaving for the people behind us? So, our overriding theme is where ladies become legends. Our philosophy is to compete at a high level academically, on the court, and in the community. We want to, number one, be very conscientious academic students and graduate with at least one, if not two degrees. Then obviously we want to compete for championships at a high level on the basketball floor, and also serve our community at a high level. I also tell our players, like, who you are one place is who you are everywhere. And so, like, how do we show up in spaces? And we just talk about all those things. From a strictly basketball standpoint, we want to play up tempo. We want to play very fast pace. We're very stingy defensively. We pride ourselves on being a really good defensive team. And we want to come share the basketball. And when people come watch us play, I hope that they can tell that we're well coached, we're disciplined, and that we love each other, and that we play hard. And I feel like if you have those things, then a lot of the other things take care of itself. But overall, that is what we really focus on. We have mandatory community service hours for our players. We try to do at least one community service activity a month. Some months have more than others, depending on what month it is and what events come up. But they have a certain requirement of hours they have to meet, every semester in order to be a part of our program. And that's something that we tell our players on the front end of the recruiting process, because it's important, and that's not for everybody. So we need to know when you come here that's something you understand we're not going to fight about. We're not going to negotiate.
Right.
The same way we're not going to negotiate your effort and your attitude on the court, and we're not going to negotiate what you do academically, right?
So, Coach Taylor, I want to bring up the topic of name, image, and likeness. Have you seen any of your players benefit from NIL in maybe unique ways? Has it personally impacted, whether it's their personal lives or their families? Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had players who have been able to send money back home to their parents. Single mom, we've seen players be able to get their teeth fixed, and how that affected their self-esteem and just their confidence, because they will now open their mouth and smile because they had enough money to just go get braces or go get Invisalign. I think sometimes we hear of the outrageous cases of people buying some outlandish things, and I'm not saying that does not exist. But especially in our space of women's basketball, we try to make sure that we educate our players. We bring in financial advisors to talk to them about how to take care of your money, protect your money, invest your money, grow your money, so that they are being responsible with it. We obviously can't govern every nickel and dime that they get, but the benefit of them being able to do that and just walk away from college knowing that some of them know, like, I'm on my own when I leave here. I can't go back home, and I may not be able to play professionally. And while I know that I'm going to hopefully go get a job, like, it's just a comfort to know that they've created a nest egg for themselves because of something that they went out and earned.
I want to stay on the topic of just the resources and the opportunities that our student athletes have here at Texas A&M. Obviously, at Texas A&M, there's a wide range of resources, whether it be mental health, sports medicine, or facilities. Can you speak to how that is impacting your program and the well-being of your players?
I think that we are so fortunate. I've worked at a few different institutions, right? And we are so fortunate at A&M to have the ability to provide all of those things to our student athletes because, I try to still think from an athlete's perspective. There was no social media in the 90s when I played, and the things they have to deal with that we never even were presented with because it's right there for them to read, see, listen to. Even sports science or mental health, that was something that wasn't really talked about. And to now be able to say, like, I need to talk to someone because I haven't made a free throw, or I can't knock down this shot, or I need to talk to someone because my grandmother just passed and I'm not sleeping at night. Whatever that looks like, to be able to say, let me pick up the phone, go over there, they'll see you in 15 minutes. Like, that's a special thing. I've talked to colleagues of mine who, when they have a player who is in need of, sports performance or, just speaking to someone, they have to make an appointment. And then that appointment comes 3 weeks later. That's a long time to sit in that. And so just to know that we have that, or if it's a player who is anemic and needs to have a bunch of tests run to figure out how to get their blood levels up, like to have a nutritionist and to have dietitians and people who can just immediately sit down and figure out what it is they need. It's a special thing. And even at this level, at the Power 4 level, that doesn't happen everywhere. And so again, that credit goes to the 12th man, to our donors, to our supporters who continue to generously give their time and their money to make sure that we have the resources that we need. And so we're grateful for that. And there's no place that I would rather be, because I know that when I am talking to our current student athletes or talking to a coach, parent, or a prospect, and I say we have the best of everything, I mean it.
What do you specifically love about Texas A&M and Aggie Land and the community here?
Before I came here in 2022, I watched from afar for a really long time, being in the league, and just every time we would come here and to see the atmosphere during games, like the tradition, the fans, the stands were packed, and just to watch that, I always said that there's something really special here. And even being on the outside seeing it, when our family came in 2022, we were blown away, just blown away. And I think the genuineness of the 12th man and the Aggie Network and Aggie Land, just in terms of making sure that, like, hey, if you need anything, like, let us know, and like truly meaning it and caring about our kids and our coaches and our players and supporting us. Our first year, we won 9 games. 9 games. We knew we were going to, have an uphill battle, but the support in that year from our fans probably means more than the 19 games we won last year when we were winning. And so just to know that there's a love and a camaraderie there that goes beyond wins and losses. Obviously, that's very important, right? But to know that there's a genuine affection and affinity for what it is we're trying to do and respect is just something that you don't see or find everywhere.
That loyalty, it's unique.
It really is.
So you served as an assistant coach for the USA Women's National Team at the 2024 Paris Olympics, and the team secured a gold medal.
Yeah.
What was that like? Walk us through those emotions.
This was my 5th stint with USA Basketball. I was fortunate to get involved as a court coach in 2018 and then became like an assistant coach in 2021. And this is my 4th straight summer with USA Basketball at the junior national level and the national level. My second time with the national team, my first time was in 2022. So number one, it was cool to be reunited with most of them as players and the staff. Cheryl Reeve, who's the head coach for the Minnesota Lynx, was our head coach. Mike Thibault, who's a GM of the Washington Mystics, was an assistant coach, and Carol Lawson, who's an assistant coach at Duke. And then our 2 scout coaches were Kurt Miller, who was formerly with the LA Sparks, and Tanisha Wright, who's the head coach of the Atlanta Dream. So to number one, be in a meeting space with those type of minds every single day, right? What a great way to continue to learn and challenge yourself and have different thoughts and perspectives. And then to be around those 12 young ladies, those 12 women, and to see what they do every day. I don't know if I can put it into words. I'm trying to count 4 or 5 of them were mothers and had their children with them. I'm a mother. I have 2 small girls. And it really hit me because I know what I do every day, but I'm also not performing. I'm not physically out there performing. Chelsea Gray has a 5-month-old who is in the room with her, and she shows up every day to practice. And I know that baby's up all night long. To see Diana Taurasi have her 2 kids, Brianna Stewart had her 2 kids. Like Brittany Griner had a baby while she was at the Olympics. Like, and to see them on their downtime change diapers, feed kids, make bento boxes, and then walk into practice and just be a machine. Like, it's just impressive.
Wow.
And even like for Sabrina Ionescu or Kelsey Plum or Asia Wilson, like the demands that people have on their time, and to watch like them walk out of practice and go have to shoot an ad or a commercial or, do all the media interviews and handle all of those things. It made me feel normal, if I'm being honest, because I'm the queen of compartmentalizing, and sometimes I give myself a hard time about that. And so that probably gave me permission to keep doing it. Although I'm sure people in my circle probably don't want me to do as much as I do. But to be able to coach them every day and to just watch them meet the moment, it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, because they all know how to meet the moment, and everybody cannot do that. It is a special thing to watch somebody meet the moment. And when you get to watch that and witness that, not once, not twice, but over and over, and it be a different person every night, and them share that responsibility for the name of our country and USA basketball, it's something I'll never forget.
I love what you said, the meeting the moment.
Yeah.
How do you think that mentality, you'll take that and implement it with your program?
We've constantly said to our players, I'm counting on you, counting on me. What does that mean? It's a quote by Maya Angelou. And it's like, I am going to bring my best. I'm going to prepare every single day. I'm going to do all the things that I have to do to the best of my ability when nobody is watching, because at some point I am counting on you, counting on me. And whenever you call me up and say you need me, I need to meet the moment. I need to be ready. So we're constantly telling our players, what's done in the dark comes to light. Keep working, keep working. You never know when you're going to get your opportunity. Pressure is a privilege. All those things are mantras that we say all the time. And we can do hard things. It's like you're saying the same message, but 50 different ways, right? And hoping that one of those things stick. And the more they practice that, the more prepared they are to meet the moment. Some people are special and can wake up and meet the moment, but most of the time it comes from repeated habits at a high level, because you are who you are. And in intense moments, pressure moments, high stakes moments, you just become more heightened of a person of who you are, good or bad.
Yep.
And so as much as we can teach them to be disciplined and to do the right thing and to continue to do the right thing and not to get bored with or tired of doing the simple things well, hard, elite, you're going to look up one day and you're going to meet the moment.
Joni Taylor on Answering the Call podcast. Coach Taylor, thank you so much again for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Answering the Call, the official podcast of the 12th Man Foundation. A special shout out to our incredible podcast producer, Megan Hoffman, and to 12th Man Productions for their generous use of this studio. We also extend our heartfelt gratitude to every donor and every season ticket holder for always answering the call through loyal support of Texas A&M athletics and our student athletes. We will be back soon with more content. Thanks, and gig 'em.